up, everybody? Welcome back to Saturdays in the SEC, episode 140. Back to recap rivalry week in college football around the SEC. Just my initial thoughts from this weekend. Obviously, insane weekend of college football, just like it is every year. But if you didn't get in a fight before, during, or after the game, did you even play on Saturday? Because I mean, we had fights breaking out all across college football, rivalry intensity at an all-time high. I mean, it was a blast to watch from 11 a.m. all the way to the end of the day. Even starting on Friday, we're going to get into the Egg Bowl and Georgia Tech here in a little bit. But yeah, just a fantastic weekend, a rivalry weekend in college football. But we got to start off with the Iron Bowl, obviously. In Tuscaloosa. Alabama wins 28-14. I've been looking forward to hearing your thoughts since the game ended on Saturday. So go ahead and lead us off with your Iron Bowl thoughts.
All right. Might get a little heated here. In no way, shape, or form, we heard what I said last week. I thought Alabama was going to win. I said that Auburn had trouble with false starts in their most important drive of the season at home. That wasn't just going to magically disappear in Bryant-Denny. I told you it would come back to bite us. It did several times. Stalled some drives several times. I also said that I don't just magically see in all the problems that Auburn's had all year just magically going away. And again, they didn't. Defense, man, I got to start off on the high note before I get into the things I'm going to complain about. But the defense played absolutely out of their minds. Forced 4 turnovers. If you'd have told me on Friday night, going into the game that Auburn was going to win the turnover battle 4-1, I'd have told you Auburn wins. I told you I don't care where they play. Play at Bryant-Denny, play at Jordan-Hare, play at the Dallas Cowboys Stadium. I told you I don't care where they play. Auburn wins the turnover battle 4-1. They win the game. That most people would agree. So that egregious that not only I believe 3, maybe 6 points were scored off turnovers. I know 3 for sure, but I believe it was only 3. But I could be wrong, and if I'm wrong, it would be 6. Regardless, you see how well you do when you give Jarquez Hunter the ball 20 plus times. Every time you've done it, your offense has consistently moved the ball down the field. You may not have won the game, but your offense has consistently driven the ball down the field. You talked about in your presser that you're going to have to run the ball to be successful. You knew that going in. Jarquez Hunter got 13 carries and 1 pass attempt. That's not even obviously a big issue. We'll get into it. But when you come out in the first play from scrimmage, 5 wide, empty backfield, my God, might as well concede defeat right then. What the hell are we doing? You say you got to establish the run. You know you have to do that. You have verbally said that. And then you just completely out of the gate, 5 wide, empty backfield. Peyton Thorne luckily is able to scramble and get like 4 or 5 from it. I mean, complete busted play. Bama locked Auburn down in coverage all day. They really didn't. Peyton didn't have too much time protection to really pick apart the defense if they could have gotten open downfield, but really there was no getting open downfield. They locked Auburn up all day. I don't want to say Auburn couldn't run the ball. Auburn just didn't run the ball. It's not the fact that it wasn't there. They just never really tried. Thought that was a bit egregious. You look at Peyton Thorne's stat line, he's 24-41 for 301 yards and a touchdown. He did throw an interception, but a touchdown, you say, okay, well, that's not that bad, 300 yards to the air. Yeah, well, you combine that with 98 on the ground, and 42 of those is coming from Peyton Thorne. Half of those came from busted plays where he's just making something happen. Not a recipe for success, especially when you only get 3 points off turnovers. I thought you hit on it well last week, talking about Oklahoma taking down Alabama and how they did it on defense. They set the edge, and they forced Milroe back up the middle. Auburn set the edge well at times in the game, and when they set the edge well, they were able to contain Milroe for a short gain or no gain. More often than not, though, they got beat around the edge. They could not set the edge for nothing. But also, another thing that I said would trickle in from last week that I didn't think would be fixed was the missed tackles. Auburn had several missed tackles against Texas A&M. Several missed tackles against Texas A&M. And they had several missed tackles against Alabama. 2 sacks for sure. 1 sack on 3rd and long that Jalen Milroe breaks out of, gets a big first down. They end up later scoring and pretty much putting the game away right there. You sack him right there, there's a real chance if you can put any type of points up that it's a real game. But no, you can't bring him down. Milroe played out of his mind. Like you said, if he rushes for, what is it, 90 or more, they win every time, or they've won every time. If he rushes for under 75 or whatever the number is, I don't remember exactly, but he had a well of a game. Let's see what on the ground. He went up for 104 on the ground, 256 in the air. Did have an interception. Fumbled it twice, but the first fumble I don't think it was on him. That's just bad protection. No protection there. The defensive end just made a great play. The second one a little bit was on him, I believe. And if I'm mixing them up, the one where he got hit from behind, the strip sack, pretty much, that's really not on him. He had no protection. But the one that he was carrying it kind of in the sack and it got ripped from him, obviously on him. But he played well enough to obviously win the game. He didn't play great. Obviously, he had a couple turnovers, but he played well enough to win the game. And then when it came down to it, he made the plays that needed to be made, and he extended several drives. Auburn, again, was atrocious on 3rd down. That's something else that wasn't going to change automatically in Bryant-Denny. And again, it reared its ugly head. Atrocious on 3rd downs defensively. Granted, they were on the field half the day, but I think that the defense played extremely well. They just couldn't get off the field on 3rd down, which has been the story this season. I think the future's bright for the defense. Auburn's got to hit on the quarterback, man. No hate on Peyton Thorne, really. I know I've given him crap all year and kind of dogged him. Honestly deserved, but also mad respect for him. Kept his head down, kept working, came out, gave Auburn a couple of really good performances, had a big win in his last game at home. Through all the adversity and all the crap that he's heard all year through the fans, the last 2 years, really, I got respect for him because he grinded it out and he was nothing but a good teammate. And so I thought, I respect him for that, but I'm glad that era is over. That is one thing me and Dad were texting because I'm in Tennessee now, so I can't watch the games with my dad. And so I was texting during the Iron Bowl, really more complaining. Me and him were complaining back and forth to one another. And he says, I'm just glad the Peyton Thorne's era is over. After the clock hit 0, that's the first thing he texted me. The Peyton Thorne era is over.
Yeah.
But all that being said, Hugh Freeze, man, I have defended him till I've been blue in the face. I have. And he's made me look like a complete jackass because of it. You're telling me on 2nd and goal, I'm not claiming that I can go be an offensive coordinator at the Division III level. I could not call up Coach Turk right now at Huntington College and even try to go be a GA there. I'm not claiming that I know anything about football when it comes to coaches. They have forgotten more than I'll ever know. I understand that completely when it comes to the X's and O's. But even I know that on 2nd and goal with, in my opinion, stats-wise, no, because he didn't get enough carries. But in my opinion, you've got the best back in the conference, and you're going to call a quarterback draw. Not like you've got Cam Newton back there. Hell, not even like you got Bo Nix back there. You got Peyton Thorne. His legs are okay at times. You don't need to rely on them, especially on 2nd and goal. You don't hand it to Jarquez. And Peyton does a hell of a job and gets all the way down to the inch line. And you're going to tell me on 3rd and goal from the inch line that you're going to go shotgun? Again, not claiming that I can go be any better offensively, being a better offensive coordinator throughout the year. I'm not saying that. But I know at that situation, you don't go shotgun. Maybe not in goal line at all, but definitely not on the 1-inch line. That was what baffled me the most. Because you could have got 6 there. Hand it to Jarquez twice. I promise you. I don't care who you are. He's not getting stopped. You hit it through 3 times in a row. I don't think he's getting stopped where he can't gain 3 yards in 3 plays. I just don't see it happening. At least try. That's all I'm saying, man. The best player on your team, and you don't give it to him to give you 6 when it could have changed the game completely. Blows my mind. Blows my mind. Like, I know that is – I feel like Hugh Freeze is so stressed out and knows he has to do good or he's out on the streets in a few years, I think he wants it so bad that he outthinks himself on game day. I truly, truly think that there has been several times this year where he has just outthought himself because he's like, well, they think that we're going to go in and just pound it with Jarquez because that's how we're going to have to beat them. So they're going to be keying in on Jarquez and we can hit some big plays. I'm not saying that's what he thinks, but I saw it happen multiple times this year in the Oklahoma game when Peyton Thorne threw the pick six. Why not just hand it off there? Why not just hand it off there? He's thinking they're keying in on Jarquez. Might as well catch them while they're napping. I truly feel like watching it for 12 weeks this year, watching 12 games of this just god awful, whatever you want to call it, train wreck when Auburn's on offense. You're just like, I hope they can get a first down, is what it feels like. It feels like he's just outthinking himself. That is truly what, from a Auburn fan's perspective, trying to be as unbiased as I possibly can. It just feels like he is out game planning himself and trying to do too much. Maybe I'm wrong. That's just how it feels to me. I've said my piece. I thought the play calling was egregious. I thought only giving Jarquez the ball 13 times egregious. And I think going really first play of the game when Auburn went 5 wide, empty backfield, I was like, Auburn's losing this game. Auburn is losing this from the first play of scrimmage. That's what you're going to do. Might as well not even showing up. Ridiculous.
To me, before I thought one of the biggest things before, half, as you highlighted a minute ago, you got it to third and goal at the Bama one. I can't believe he didn't go for it on fourth down. Like I know you got stopped on third down, but to me, the way the game was playing out, you really needed to get it to 14-10 going into the locker room, and getting it to 14-6. I was like, I just under a normal circumstance, I can kind of see, okay, cut it to one possession. But if you look at the position Auburn's in, they were 5-6 coming in. You're trying to win the Iron Bowl. To me, that wasn't a decision to win the Iron Bowl. To me, I
And if you're
mean,
going to kick field goals, you're going to lose it anyway.
that's what I'm saying. Like, to me, right there, I was like, from that point on, Alabama came out the opening drive and drove down the score in the second half. But to me, when they kicked that field goal at halftime, I was like, you've seen so many coaches before be aggressive and against Alabama specifically in a big game, like they're trying to put the pressure on them. To me, that was just kind of letting Alabama off the hook a little bit. Like, yeah, I mean, sure, they could have got stopped there and not got any points out of it, but to me, it's like it was well worth the risk. You needed to get it to 14-10 going in the locker room. To me, just from an unbiased opinion, to have a legitimate chance in the second half. Not saying they didn't have a chance at 14-6, but man, 7 would have been huge there. And to me, you did Alabama a favor by letting them off the hook and not trying to punch it in there. To me, it was just
The shotgun on third and down is on third and goal. It was from the one BS. It was closer than that. The damn nose of the ball was sniffing the damn goal line when Peyton Thorne was down. Get under center. You ran QB sneak twice last week against Texas A&M. You ran it twice. Run it 2 more times. Jesus Christ. I don't get it. I don't get it.
Yeah. You saw this a couple times, not necessarily at a shotgun, but Texas, what they did to Texas A&M in short yardage. Yeah, I just thought I think a lot of times teams overthink it on the goal line in short yardage. But yeah, to me, it kind of let Alabama off the hook there before halftime. I was like, shit, I would have bet I would have lost, but I would have bet everything I had. Like, yeah, they're going 4 down territory here. They're going to try to punch it in, make it 14-10, have momentum going in the locker room. And to me, you just kind of, I don't know, it just kind of killed it to me. And I thought it really kind of would have put some more pressure on Alabama early in the second half. And when you kind of let them off the hook, I didn't understand that, especially considering the position that you're in. Like, you literally have nothing to lose. Like, why not be ultra aggressive? Like, you know what? Like, even if it doesn't work out for you, you can go, man, we did everything we could. Like, we were as aggressive as we could be. I'm not saying be stupid, but like, that's not even really being aggressive. That's just, to me, that was the right call. Just 4 down territory. You're trying to punch it in, make it a really tight ball game at half. And so, yeah, I liked the decision because I thought it let Alabama off the hook and took pressure off of them. going into halftime. But yeah, I thought the thought she said too. When Alabama's able to run the ball effectively, they're going to have really good success. I mean, even with the 4 turnovers. I mean, if you'd have told me that last week going into this game, I'd been super nervous. I'd have been booking my tickets to
It was really 4-2 on the turnovers, but the Jarquez heave. Number one, why are we running a trick play with 11:40 to go? It's not like that was the first play. You were driving.
yeah,
They were driving with 11:48 to go. I believe is when beautiful ball, by the way. Like, not it didn't end beautifully, but it was. He actually threw a nice spiral. I was like, damn, he let that thing go.
yeah,
Obviously, ended
yeah,
badly, but like, why are you calling that? I just lost. Again, I think that Hugh Freeze is out thinking himself, and everything I said to defend him this year has made me look like just a complete jackass. I have no thoughts on him until I see what the product is next year, because if this happens again, it's going to be a bit ridiculous. I don't think that he's going to go 5-6, 5-7, 6-6 again. I think they're going to be better next year for sure. But the coaching calls and the decisions that are being made are just head scratchers, and you choose to go for it against Oklahoma and don't get it on the goal line, whatever. But you don't do that in the Iron Bowl. Makes no sense.
yeah.
Makes no
I
sense.
mean, to me, like that's a game where you throw. I mean, like I said, when you're considering the position you're in, like the fact you're not ultra aggressive in this game to me is says. I mean, it speaks volumes. I was surprised I was surprised at times how, like I said, in that decision specifically, how conservative it was. And like I said, in a normal circumstance, okay, I don't think it's much of a gripe, but I think considering the position you were in coming into this, the fact that you didn't go for it on that you were on the inch line, from the 1, 2, whatever it ended up being, I just couldn't believe that wasn't 4 down territory there. Um, I did,
Bunch of dumb coaching calls for sure.
yeah, and I think too. I mean, I agree 100% what you said. I think a lot of it just boils down to I think they're so limited at quarterback. I just don't think he can't really run what he wants to run. Like this isn't a Hugh Freeze
Fair.
offense, and Jalen Milroe has been good at times this year, been bad at other times. I think Alabama, not quite to the degree Auburn is, obviously, but I think they're in the same boat offensively where they're with a quarterback that is very limited in certain aspects that they really need him to be good in for this offense and what they really want to run. And I
Well, I tell
think
you what. Keep going. I'm sorry. I thought you were
no,
done.
you're fine. But I think he's limited in areas where they really need to excel at, and that's why I think Alabama's in the same boat to a certain degree, and I think you're going to see them upgrade and get a quarterback that more fits what they want to do. I mean, they even said earlier in the year, like, we're not running very much of our offense. And to me, that was pretty eye opening, like to come out. It wasn't, throwing him under the bus in any way. They're like, hey, we're going to do things that he excels at and is really good at. But to me, that was like, this isn't necessarily our style of quarterback that we want to have going forward. So, and I think at times that's really hurt Alabama's offense this year because you're not as good in the intermediate passing game as you need to be. Some of the decision making I've mentioned a lot in the zone read game. Still, at times, wasn't very good in this game. I mean, not making the correct reads. I mean, he's a really talented player, no doubt about it. I just don't think going forward they need a quarterback more tailored to their system, and I think you'll see that going forward. So I think both offenses at times, and Auburn more so than Alabama, but I think both offenses have been limited to a degree, and I think you've seen kind of some head scratching calls on both sides, and I think most of it kind of goes back to they don't really have their style or their guy at quarterback that you're going to see going forward. So I think that's affected a lot of what they ran this year from both sides.
I tell you, I wish Alabama had their style of quarterback on Saturday because Auburn would have had a lot more sacks. I'm telling you, man, that dude is slippery. He reminds me so much, and obviously he's much better and much more polished in all aspects of his game. But in that way of how he just gets out of tackles and breaks out of sacks, he reminds me so much of Nick Marshall, dude. I know that that's what opposing fans were feeling when they were facing Nick Marshall, so I get it. But man, he is so good and so elusive in the pocket. It's damn near impossible to get him down. You got to have two or three guys on him, or he ain't going down. So I tell you what, I'm excited for them to have a more traditional quarterback like theirs. Michael Penix could run, but he couldn't. He ain't moving around the pocket and being elusive and running down the field like Jalen Milroe. I wish they'd have had a more traditional quarterback because Auburn might have been a little more successful on stopping them on third down.
Yeah.
Good grief.
And there's a few things too, like there was Auburn brought pressure, an unblocked defender off. I I think the weak side. I can't remember the play exactly, but guy comes free, and those are the kind of things that he needs to be better at for them because it's like if if you're the quarterback in that situation, you know what your protection is. You got to know that guy's coming free. Like nobody has
Yeah.
this man. He's coming free.
Yeah.
That's an area where you're like, okay, I got to get the ball out hot. He doesn't. There's just certain areas where it's like, man, you're a second year vet. You played 2 full years now. Like, there's just certain areas where you got to be more aware of, and there's just certain things that it's like that really hamper you for your offense. Now he will pull off some absolute spectacular plays too, like you said. He's an absolute handful to bring down. There's no doubt about it. And there's a lot of ways in which he excels, but there's a lot of ways too that might not show up on the stat sheet a lot, but it really hampers your offense and what they want
That's
to
fair.
run and kind of puts you in some bad positions. Luckily, they weren't in third and down, third and long a ton, but it absolutely has killed the offense when they're in third and long this year. But um, I honestly think I think he's going to be a top 5 quarterback taken in the draft wherever that lands. So I think he's probably going to go to the NFL. But um, I just think, like I said, really good college player. I just think going forward, I think you're going to see a quarterback that's more a little bit of fit for what they want to run. And I think they really haven't been able to install their full playbook this year based on that. And like I said with Auburn too, I think the same thing with Peyton Thorne. There's a lot of calls that make you scratch your head, but I think it all boils back to that it's it's not really they can't run the offense they really want to run, and I think that's why at times you see the struggles you have this year, at
Absolutely.
times between both these offenses.
Alabama, 12 of 18 on third downs. Auburn, 4 of 12. That is basically the stat of the game right there. You're going to win third downs. You're going to win the game. Granted, turnovers kind of even that out, but still, they were 12 of 18. They had double the amount of conversions as Auburn had stops on third down. That is story of Auburn's season on defense. They struggle getting off the field on third downs, especially third and long. I can name 4 off the top of my head against Arkansas. I can name 3 off the top of my head against Cal. 3 off the top of my head against Oklahoma. It's damn near every game, but that is the stat of the season that sums it up for Auburn. The stat of the game that sums up how it went. Auburn could get them there, they just couldn't finish. 18, you got them in third down 18 times. That's fantastic. You're giving that offense trouble. You get them in third down 18 times. You're giving that offense trouble. You can only stop them 6 times. That is not a recipe for success.
Yeah, I'll throw out one more stat of the game too that kind of is a great example of why the final score ended up being what it was. It's red zone efficiency. Alabama was 4 of 4, 28 points. That's what they end up scoring. Auburn was 2 of 3 in the red zone for 6 points.
Yep.
There's your ball game there. You know, both teams move the ball at times. Both teams, Alabama was at 457, Auburn ended at 399. Both teams were able to move the ball pretty effectively. Like I said, Alabama was much better on third downs, which extended a lot of drives. But in the end, Alabama was able to convert the red zone, turned into touchdowns. Auburn had to settle for field goals, didn't go for it for half, and I
No
think that's
touchdowns
kind
in
of
the red
what you,
zone. It's horrible.
yeah, I think that's kind of main reason you got what you got as far as the final score Saturday.
Yep. I agree. I'm done talking about that game. I've thought about it too much. It's driving me nuts. Uh there is a game I do want to talk about that was happened in my city up here in Nash Vegas and what people in SEC town call West Knoxville. Um and Tennessee was taking on the Volunteers. The Volunteers were taking on Tennessee, or excuse me, the Vandy was taking on the Vols, hosting them, and they kind of jumped out early, jumped out 14 to nothing, I believe, and kind of were like, okay, they might shock the world again this year. And then Tennessee said, no, 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 slow down a little bit. We gotta get settled in, and we let us take a breath. And then they hit two big pass plays back in it, and then that's pretty much all she wrote. Nico Iamaleava had a really good day through the air. I believe he had four passing touchdowns. Really, really good day through the air. So no touchdowns on the ground. They was all through his arm. I thought they had one on the ground, but I mean, he really just took over, especially in the second half. But second quarter on, it was all Tennessee. Vandy kind of had a little fight there late, but I mean, again, we kind of touched on it. Blueprint's kind of been out on Pavia since about week 6, week 7. He hasn't really dominated the team. They've still won some games, but it's not been solely because of him like it was earlier in the year. People kind of figured out how to give him some fits and kind of slow him down. You're not really going to stop him, but kind of slow him down a little bit. But Tennessee did a really, really good job, especially in the second half. I mean, only allowing 6 points in the second half. But second quarter on, it was all Vols for the rest of the day. But I mean, Vanderbilt, they showed up early, and that's about all they had was one quarter in them.
Yeah, I mean, you said it. They opened the game with a kickoff return for a touchdown. Um, Tennessee's first possession fumbles deep in their own territory. Vandy scores. I mean, it's 14-0, drop of a hat. Um, it was all Tennessee after that. Once they got settled in, I mean, they ended the game on what, a 36-9 run.
Yeah.
Like you said, from second quarter on was extremely dominant. Um, Keys of game. I mean, Nico Imialiava had a clean pocket for a lot of his day. I thought the action was great. Obviously, Dylan Sampson doing what he's done, and 25 carries, 178 yards. I mean, they outrushed Vandy almost 3-1. I mean, it was 281 to 108. So, really impressive for Tennessee on the ground. Super balanced. Outpassed them 257 to 104. So yeah, I mean Tennessee's defense was dominant in this game. I mean only 212 total yards for Vandy. Like I said, they scored on a special team score to open the game. And then they had a short field off a fumble. I think they got it on the 11-yard line or something like that. So, yeah, Tennessee's defense is stingy, what they've done all year. And then Tennessee's offense kind of exploded a little bit. I think, you've kind of been waiting for that a little bit, to have the sort of day that they have both running and throwing. They've been a great rushing offense this year, but to see Nico and hit some shots down the field, like that's what they're going to have to do. They're going to be in the college football playoff, so for them to make a run, they're going to have to be really balanced on offense and have that threat of being able to stretch the ball down the field. Like that's when Tennessee's been at their best, and if they can play defense at this high of a level, that's going to bode well for them going into the college football playoff and have a chance to make a run once they get there.
Depending on where they fall in the seeding, they could have a really good path to get to at least the Final Four. I think that depending on who you draw first is really a big one. But then obviously where the dominoes fall after that. So depending on where you're seated really is a big part of how far you can go in this and matchups and where you match up against another team, obviously. But depending on where they fall, they have a really good chance to go deep. My favorite game of the day, South Carolina and Clemson. Clemson, they win this game. They go to the SEC championship, I believe, or excuse me, SEC, the ACC championship. However, Miami loses, put them in there anyway. So, or out, they'd have won or lost, Miami lost, whatever. They're in there. Clemson's going to play in the ACC championship game, but it wasn't decided at this point because Miami played in the 2:30 slot, maybe six. Yeah, it was 2:30 slot,
Yeah.
I believe. So really, this game was the quarterback show. I mean, you got Cade Klubnik, you got Lenore Sellers. Really nothing going in the first half, trading some blows, getting warmed up, getting going. And then Cade Klubnik busts off a nice little run to cap off a drive, touchdown. Then right after, very next drive, Lenore Sellers caps off a nice big 20-something yard run, cap off a drive. Nice little drive. And he had kind of did a little circus act down there and tiptoed, stayed in bounds, dove, hit the pylon. Fantastic play. I'm texting everybody, Lenore Sellers, Lenore Sellers. Little do I know. All right, so comes down, we're tie ball game. You know, everybody's happy. Then, man, third quarter comes around. Cade Klubnik another big long run to cap off a nice drive. Touchdown. South Carolina gets it back. You're thinking, is Lenore Sellers going to answer back? Well, not so fast. Stall out a little bit, end up getting a drive, kicks a field goal. All right, so it's 14-10. Clemson's leading. South Carolina's got the ball. There's about 6-ish left, 6.5, somewhere around those minutes left in the game. South Carolina's got all their timeouts left. They are driving. They're driving. They're in the red zone. If they're not in the red zone, they're on the 25. Lenore Sellers tries to force a ball to the front corner of the end zone or right around the 5-yard line. Ball gets picked off. Clemson, pretty much, I thought it was over with. Clemson picks the ball off. I'm like, this is game. South Carolina just lost their chance at potentially getting into playoffs, but upsetting this team, getting to 9 wins, getting a really good bowl game. I'm like, man, South Carolina just lost their chance. Damn, that's tough. I had their money line, 50 to win 57. It was a plus 115 line. So I'm like, I'm a little upset. Well, then, bam, their defense comes out. Believe they get a sack on that drive. End up using I don't know if they use their timeouts that early, but they end up getting the ball back. And then Lenore Sellers says, don't worry, guys. Forget that happened. If I'm on my back, let's go get a dub. Marches them down the field, boom, takes off another 20-yard run to the house, seal the deal. Might as well put him in the record books, not record books, but put him on every South Carolina's, get a fat head for him, put him on in their living room wall. The man, he's my favorite player in the league. I liked him at the beginning of the year, but slowly but surely throughout the year, he has become my favorite player in the whole entire league. Ready to watch him, in this postseason. Hopefully they get a nod in the playoffs. I don't think that it's likely. I really don't. But I'm ready to watch him in whatever bowl game they go to. But this guy and this team, I'm telling you, watch out for him. Beamer is building something. You can go ahead and give Beamer the SEC Coach of the Year award. He just won it on Saturday. I mean, absolutely fantastic showing. Really, this one came down to the wire. When the 6.5-minute mark came and Lenore Sellers threw the pick, I was like, damn. All the last 6 weeks since Alabama and the great comeback they had against Alabama in the second half, the last 2 or 3 drives were insane. Since then, they have not lost a game. And it's not that they haven't lost a game. They have been dominant every single week. And then this week they come play their biggest rival, and I'm like, damn, they had their chance. They were driving. And then, sure enough, their defense shores up. No surprise here. And then they give the North Sellers a chance one more time. I mean, that's on you, Clemson. You give the man too many chances, he's going to take advantage of it eventually. But it's crazy. Quarterbacks traded touchdowns, and the winner of the day is Alex Herrera kicking a field goal to decide the difference. Obviously, the game-winning touchdown was the North Sellers. But both quarterbacks having 2 rushing touchdowns, pretty cool in the big rivalry game. Both of these are really, really good quarterbacks. Probably going to play at the next level. The North Sellers got a couple more years. I'm really excited to see what he's going to do in the future. I'm telling you, I'm not excited to see him play against Auburn whenever they have to draw him. But this man is good. He potentially might be the best quarterback in the league next year, and I'm not exaggerating one bit.
Yeah, I mean, honestly, kind of simple analysis. I mean, great game, great game for both these teams, both these quarterbacks. But I mean, Lenore Sellers, his legs were the absolute difference. I mean, in this game, I mean, it's about as simple as that. Man, a
Yeah.
couple of those scrambles he made. Uh,
166. He ran for 2 more yards than he passed for.
yeah,
13 for 21, 164, and an interception, 16 carries for 166, 2 touchdowns, averaged 10.4 carry. And Rocket Sanders also had 18 for 60. So, I mean, they were running all over him. 268 yards, 41 carries, or 40 as a team.
yeah, I mean they outrushed Clemson 267 to 139. I mean, like I said, Lenore Sellers with his legs over 160. Some timely runs too. I mean, some
Yeah.
physical runs. I mean, punishing runs, just running through people, running through like
Yeah,
you
he looks for guys.
yeah, you better bring both arms, your body, and then some, because I mean, he is looking. He's not looking to slide. He'll run you over. He's going to keep his legs moving. I mean, he had those two big touchdown scrambles were, I mean, just magnificent. Honestly, I don't know what else to say. I mean, it was an unbelievable performance for him. Like you said, when they threw the interception as they were driving to potentially take the lead, luckily there was 10 minutes left in the game,
It
so
was 10.
uh,
It wasn't. I thought it was a little less than that.
but their defense got a quick 3-and-out though, got the ball back, and as they've done really good all year, and were able to give him a chance, give him another opportunity, and he took advantage of it.
Which, granted,
Um,
Clemson almost drove back down and won it themselves and ended up throwing an interception. That was a great play by the LSU, by the South Carolina. I believe it was a linebacker that made the interception.
yeah,
Fantastic play, but Clemson damn near came back and won that game too. They drove down the field. They were taking big chunk after big chunk.
yeah, they were on the 20-yard line when they threw that
Yeah,
interception. Had about 30 seconds left or so, so there was definitely going to get a field goal more than likely.
yeah.
They were trying to, be aggressive, win it with a touchdown, and they got a little pressure on Club, and it made him step up in the pocket, and um, the
Come
ball got
on.
deflected off the receiver, and like you said, a great play by the South Carolina linebacker, and clinched it for the Gamecocks, 9-3 on the season. Yeah, as you said, SEC Coach of the Year for Shane Beamer.
No doubt
Just
about it. No
unbelievable
doubt
job
about it.
this year. Like you said, Lenore Sellers, he's we've said he's emerging star. He's not emerging anymore. He already is a star. And um, I tell you what, there's been some good quarterbacks in the SEC this year, but you kind of look ahead to next year and what some of these young guys were able to do this year. Lenore Sellers, DJ Lagway. I think you're saying Nico come more and more into his own as well. So that's no telling who's going to be added through the portal, for SEC quarterback this
I'll
offseason.
be
That's going to
honest.
be
I'm all Sellers. I'm all Lenore Sellers. I think he's going to be the best quarterback in the league next year. I really
I mean,
truly do.
I think you got some young guns too ready to take a step.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
Austin Simmons at Ole Miss has
I'm ready to
shown
see
some
Jade
flashes.
Rashada at Georgia.
Yeah, Rashada. Gonna be some good quarterback battles across the league as well. Arch is gonna be starting next year. So yeah, these young guys are ready to really make some noise, and the quarterback positions in really good hands in the SEC.
Absolutely. Absolutely. I think South Carolina, I think right now, the way they're playing and their whole body of work, I think they could get in at a lower seed and it be understandable. But again, I've been preaching the whole time. I don't think a 3-loss non-conference champion should be in. So I don't think South Carolina deserves to be in. So I can't. I'd love to see them in it, but I can't sit here and say that they deserve to be in when all year I've been saying that a 3-loss team shouldn't be in. So I now that doesn't mean a 3-loss team won't be in because Bama's gonna make it. Bama's gonna make it in there. They had everybody lose they needed to lose, and they won pretty handily. Even with some mistakes, they won pretty handily. So Bama's going to be in. They're going to be the 3-loss team. South Carolina's not going to be a 3-loss team in there, sadly. Ole Miss
My
might not
I
even be
think
in
my
there.
opinion on playoff is I mean I don't think, like you said, 3-loss team. I don't think any of them are probably deserving of being in. But when you have 12 teams, you got to have 12 teams to fill the spots. And I think the
100%.
way it's worked out, you're going to have a 3-loss team.
Agree. I
For
think there's
my
going to be some
opinion,
teams that get left out that shouldn't just because their schedule's not great. But again, you can't control your schedule, but mean, you can control who you schedule outside of your conference, so that I mean, people can argue that for sure. But I think the committee has talked about all year. You've heard them say multiple times, good losses. I've heard them talk about good losses more than anything, really, more than good wins or bad losses. But if you're going to take that much weight into good losses, you've got to take that much weight into bad losses. And
Yeah.
South Carolina doesn't. South Carolina doesn't have that in their favor because they got absolutely thumped by Ole Miss. Only scored 3 at home. It's not like they were on the road. They were at home in Williams-Brice and only scored 3 against Ole Miss. And Ole Miss ended up being a 3-loss team. So that doesn't help them either. So I don't know. There's a bunch of wishy-washy that could go back and forth. I tell you this, I don't think a 3-loss team is going to win it because I don't think, like I said, the problems for Auburn's not going to go away like that. The problems for those 3-loss teams are not going to go away when the teams that don't have that many problems face them. I just it's not like it's 1 or 2 games like it used to be. You got to win 3 or 4, especially if you're a lower seed 3-loss team. I don't think those things are going to just go away overnight. So
I think,
regardless of who the 3-loss team is, I don't think one of them will win a championship this year.
yeah, I mean, like I said, it's kind of one of those cases to me where I don't think any of them are necessarily deserving of being in, but the way things have unfolded, you got to have 12 to put in. And
Yeah,
I will say this about kind of talking about these three specifically, the SEC teams, Alabama, Ole Miss, South Carolina. I mean, in one hand, I say, okay, they don't deserve to be in. But in my opinion, there is a couple teams that are going to be in the playoff for sure that I would take all three of these teams over them. In my opinion,
100%.
I think these three teams are a better football team than them.
I
You know,
agree
like
with that. I agree with that. I think that I would take those 3 teams over Indiana for sure,
yeah,
and they're going
yeah,
to be in there. But my argument to that is why even strap it up every Saturday?
yeah.
What's the
No,
point?
I.
Because if you're going to go 10-1 or 11-1 and have,
Mhm.
yeah, the loss was bad and it was against the real only competition you played. Yeah, that's true. But why play the other 11? That's my only argument to it is yes, I would pick those teams if I'm going to be betting a spread or betting a money line. I'm going to pick
Yeah,
all 3 of those SEC teams against Boise State, against Indiana, hell, against Ohio State if they end up getting in. Like I'm going to pick them against teams like that for sure. Arizona State, I'm going to pick them against SMU. But why play the games if you're going to go 12-0, 11-1, and be left out? It's pointless to even strap it up on Saturday. That's my argument.
yeah. No, for sure. And I have absolutely no problem with them being in there. I think it's the right call. But I think if you look at it objectively, and I think most people would probably
Right,
agree, I think like if somebody put a gun to your head, like, okay, are you taking Alabama or Indiana? Or are you taking South Carolina or Indiana? Like, I think
right, right.
most of those teams are going to pick those three SEC teams over an Indiana, over a Boise, teams like that. I think those teams should be in. Like I said, they've done what they've needed to do.
Because the
But
most deserving should play a role in it because you won that many games, you deserve to be in. You might not be the best team. People will talk about the best team, the most deserving. The most deserving needs to be a part of it because again, you can only win the games you play. That's about as simple as you can get it. But I agree with what you're saying 100%. And that's where it gets tough because yes, you want the best 12 teams in, but you don't want to penalize a team for doing nothing but winning. So it's a really a hard because you set a bad precedent if you penalize teams for only losing 1 game and
yeah,
then let 2 or 3 3-loss teams or 2-loss teams in over them. So it's a hard line to cross for sure. And I think there's going to be pissed off fans regardless of whatever happens, no matter what. There's pissed off fans in 4 teams. There's going to be pissed off fans in the 12 teams. It's going to happen regardless. But to be fair, we've spoke about it 100 times the last 2 years going into this 12-team playoff. Realistically, 8 through 12 or 9 through 12 doesn't have a great shot. They're 9 through 12 for a reason. They're not 1 through 8. Doesn't mean they can't do it, but the shots are not as high. So it's all going to come out in the wash for sure. The best team is going to eventually win it. And
yeah,
I don't think South Carolina, Alabama, or Ole Miss is the best team in college football. I think that they're better than some of the teams that are going to be in for sure, but I don't think any three of those are the best team in college football at all.
No, I'd agree, and that's why obviously I would love to see Alabama get in, but you're not going to hear a big argument from me one way or the other because, like you said, I think any of the three or four that are battling for that final spot or two, I think you could all make a case for one or the other getting in, but at the same time, like they're all like people say, oh, they don't deserve to be in or whatever. Well, yeah. I mean, they're all very flawed football teams. Like they're good teams, but they're flawed teams. Like
Right.
they each have their positives, whether it's really quality wins or really great strength of schedule, or they have their negatives, some bad losses in there, some some blowout losses, some you have different positives and negatives about each, but at the same time, it's like I'm not going to complain much one way or the other because it's like you said, there's going to be an argument, but I don't. To me, it's not. You're not going to be have as mad a fan bases because you're talking about 11 and 12th, not
Right.
fourth.
Right.
So I think either way you want to slice it, um, you're not really going to get a huge argument out of me. Like I said, like if Alabama didn't get in, I'd be disappointed for sure, but I'm not going to be angry because it's like, well, we shouldn't have went and lost to Oklahoma. We should beat Vandy, and it wouldn't be a
Yeah.
problem. So, yeah, so I think you've got flawed teams, and there's probably going to be a team or two that gets in that's not technically deserving, but at the same time, when you expanded it to 12, that's what you opened it up to. Some
Yep.
flawed
You're right.
teams getting in there to have a chance to win a national championship. So I think that's kind of what you see there, and be curious to see how it shakes itself out here tomorrow
And
night with the
before we
rankings.
get
And
back into the games, I know we're getting winded, but whatever. I love talking this stuff. They alluded to it during the game. I can't remember if it was the Auburn Alabama game or if it was another game that I was watching, but they alluded to it in the game and they said they were talking about, the playoffs and the first four team getting a bye and the rest of them just playing. And I can't remember which announcers it was that were saying it, but they asked a really good question that I want to talk about
yeah,
is do you want, obviously you want that first top four because you get guaranteed to the quarterfinal, but do you really want that bye week? Well, I know in baseball you want to keep playing, you want to keep playing, you want to keep playing. Actually, because that's baseball, it's a little different than football. But in football, do you want that bye week to take that week off, or do you want to stay hot and keep going and keep going? Because usually at that point in the season, you're hitting on all cylinders and you don't want to not play. You want to keep playing and keep playing. So like that's what I used to hate about the national championship in the BCS era. Teams would take a month off before they strapped it up again.
yeah,
Like that Auburn team that played Oregon was not the same Auburn team that played the last three games of the season. The Florida State team that played the Auburn team, not the same two teams. You're taking a whole month off. You should want to stay and play when you're hot. It was just a good question that he asked. I just wanted your opinion on it. Obviously, you want the bye game because it helps you out, but also, do you really want it? Because you could just keep staying and keep firing on all cylinders, not missing a beat, and you might, in the sense of the baseball, don't want to get cold. You want to stay hot.
yeah. No, I think it's a good point. I think with the way it's set up right now, you look at pretty much every team is going to have well, not every team, but most of the teams are going to have the same amount of break. Like for example, I'll use Alabama as an example. They played in the Iron Bowl Saturday. They're not going to the SEC championship. So if they do get in the playoff, their game will be on December 21st, which is 3 weeks off. Well, Oregon is going to play in the Big Ten title game this weekend. Let's assume they win. They're favored. They're undefeated. They'll play this weekend, the 7th. They won't play till the 31st. So it's about a 3 week layoff as well. And they'll have one few that they'll play in their conference title game, but they'll have one fewer game to win a national title. They'll only
Right.
have to play three instead of four. So I think the breaks are gonna even themselves out a little bit. I think the one that's at a disadvantage is probably a team like Georgia, maybe. They're going to the SEC championship, Georgia or Texas. Like the loser is going to be is going to have to turn around in 2 weeks and play in the first round. So they're going to have to play one extra game, and they're not going to have quite as long of an off period as a team that gets a top 4 seed. So I think a team like that's actually at the most disadvantage of anybody because they're having to play the same amount of games and they don't have as much layoff time uh until the playoffs start for them. So, but it's still going to be a 2 week break. So I mean, I don't think it's probably going to make a huge difference. Um,
I
but
tell you
I
what
think
else.
it
Go ahead. Go ahead. Go ahead.
no, I think it kind of depends on the team a little bit. You see some teams do really good with a long layoff, and then I think other teams maybe don't know how to handle that time off quite as well. Because I think you can certainly under practice, but I think you can over practice too.
Yeah,
And I think
100%.
Nick Saban's referred to this at times. He was like, it took us that first playoff against Ohio State. He was like, we didn't really handle it the right way as we need to. We were kind of took us some time to really get our schedule. We kind of handled it like a bowl game, and it wasn't really maybe the right way to go about it. So I think being in that first playoff, I think helped them kind of get their schedule right for future years that they were in it. So I do think there's teams that handle it better than others because you can certainly over practice a little bit and um, maybe work a little too much leading up to the game. So I think it's a fine line of finding that right balance.
Absolutely. One more thing before we get back into the games. I tell you what will really, really, really get some SEC fans riled up. You let Georgia lose the SEC championship game. So now they're a 3-loss team. But their third loss came in the conference championship game. You let that team drop below either Alabama, Ole Miss, or South Carolina, whichever one of them gets in, all hell is going to raise. I'm telling you, them both being 3 losses at that point, because Georgia would have 3 losses then if they lost in the championship game, correct?
That's right. Yep. Mm-hmm.
And so they would be have them play an extra game. If they were to drop lower than Alabama or Ole Miss or whoever gets in, that's a 3 loss. Hell is gonna raise. I'm just telling you that's gonna happen because I've seen nothing but Georgia fans, and they have a right to say this, but I've seen nothing but Georgia fans talk about how Alabama only dropped 6 spots losing to Oklahoma, but Georgia drops 8 or 9 spots when they lost on the road to a ranked Ole Miss team. So if they're having that much uproar about that, imagine the uproar that's going to happen if that does come out and become the scenario.
Oh yeah, for sure. I mean, I don't think that'll happen.
I don't think it'll happen either. I
But
don't
yeah,
think that would make
if
no
it
sense.
certainly did, and I
It would
couldn't
be
blame them
crazy.
honestly. I would probably be pretty upset as well. I think when you kind of look at the playoff race, I mean, I think you've really only got one spot up for grabs. I think going into this final week. I mean, Oregon, Texas, Penn State, Notre Dame, Indiana, Ohio State, Tennessee, Georgia, they're all going to be in. I think win or lose conference championship games, they're in. Then Big 10 or Big 12 champ, ACC champ, Group of Five champ. That's 11 spots right there. So I think to me, it's going to come down to Bama, Miami, Ole Miss, South Carolina for that. Like to me, it's those 4 spots or those 4 teams up for that final spot. So I don't think any of those teams, Oregon, Penn State, Texas, Georgia, like to me, they're all in regardless. I don't see any of those teams falling very far, maybe a spot or two, but I don't think any of those teams are going to fall very drastic at all. Um, I think um, I think there's a good chance all of those teams. I guess maybe Georgia, if they lose, won't host a home game, but I think everybody else in that scenario is probably going to host a home game. They're not going to fall more than a spot or two, I wouldn't think.
Yeah, absolutely. We can get into some more games. We went on a long tangent about that, but I'd really one more thing. I wish South Carolina gets in just for the sole fact that they got robbed against LSU in week 3 by the Zebras. They should be 10-2. But I've said that enough. Uh, Kentucky got absolutely throttled by Louisville. Absolutely embarrassing. We don't have to cover it if we don't want to. I mean, not really much to cover. Just an absolute ass whooping. Uh, and Kentucky, whatever Louisville did, Kentucky liked it. They made them like it. There was nothing they could do. They wanted to run it. Yep, absolutely. We're going to stuff it right down your throat. They want to throw it. We're going to throw it a little bit, but mainly we're going to go right back to running it right down your throat. I mean, they just ran it and ran it and ran it and ran it and ran it again and then ran it one more time. It was ridiculous. They ran for over 350 yards. What's 358 yards on 51 attempts? They ran it down their throat and made Kentucky like it.
What's your thoughts on Kentucky like this season? I mean, I knew neither one of, I mean, nobody expected a great season necessarily, but it's, I mean, to me, it's a very disappointing, so especially a disappointing finish, I think. And I mean, anytime you go 4-8, obviously it's going to be very disappointing and bad. But I expected a little bit more out of them this year, and Brock Vandagriff specifically. I don't think we ever got exactly what we expected out of him or
I,
Kentucky
I
this year.
agree. I agree 100%. I mean, you beat Ole Miss and you're on top of the world. You're flying high. They were ranked number 6 at the time. Then you have four, straight losses, all conference losses. So you beat Ole Miss, then you lose to Vandy by a touchdown, then you get thumped by Florida by 28. Then Auburn comes in your house and beats you. After you went up 10-0, Auburn scored 24 unanswered on you. Then Tennessee beats you by 10. You played really well, but then Tennessee pulled away. Then you beat Murray State. Then Texas clobbers you, and then Louisville snaps your neck. I just that 4-game stretch really after the Vanderbilt game, it's like they lost all fight, dude. It's like they weren't they were there, but they weren't really balled in and out there trying to give it their all. I don't know. It just the team that played against Ole Miss and the team that played against Vanderbilt and is not the same team that played against Florida and Auburn and Tennessee. I believe that wholeheartedly.
No, I mean you look at it 1-7 in the SEC. I mean, which like I said, I never expected them to compete at the top or even anywhere near the top of the conference, but
But we
I
didn't expect
definitely
them to take
expected.
Vandy's place.
Yeah, yeah. I think to me, I expected them to be about where Vandy was and Vandy to be where they were. Honestly, I
Right.
think they kind of traded places. Like Vandy really played well early, and I said it a couple weeks ago. They kind of ran out of gas down the stretch, and yeah, to me, they kind of swapped seasons a lot. Like if Kentucky would have been 3-5 in the SEC, to me would have made more sense. But yeah, very
Or even
disappointing
Florida. They had a
season.
lot of season. I would expect them to have a season like Florida, and Florida to have a season like them.
Yeah, yeah, that's for sure. I mean, a couple games you thought they would, and it wasn't even that they lost, but there were some they were just completely not competitive in. As you mentioned, that was a little bit surprising to me, but we'll see what changes are kind of made there over the offseason. They like to go portal heavy at some critical positions, so we'll kind of see what changes they make, and I'm sure some pretty wholesale changes will be made after that kind of finish and that kind of season overall.
Yeah, absolutely. And then we can move into the Arkansas Missouri game. I didn't get to watch a whole lot of this game. Um, obviously, I believe it was this a 2:30 kick. Yeah, I was playing. Was this 2:30 kick or was this a night game?
I think it was a 2:30 kick, I believe.
Yeah, that's what I didn't get to watch much of it. I thought it was at the same time as the Auburn Alabama game. I could be wrong on that, but I didn't get to watch a whole lot of this. So I'm going to be honest. I don't have a whole lot of thoughts on this game. This was one of the games I didn't get to cover or didn't get to before we got to recording. So I'd love to hear your thoughts on it. I watched some of the replays, but I can't give an honest opinion on it.
Yeah, I mean, I thought, Missouri, I thought they had a pretty good plan on offense, making it fairly easy on the quarterback. I mean, um, I thought, got the run game going a little bit as well too. Carroll had 90 yards on the ground, 22 carries. Brady Cook had some nice runs with his legs too. He's uh, able to add some mobility to his game a little bit. They don't really have that factor when he's not in there. I mean, it wasn't a
Right.
great day with his arm, but I thought they did a pretty good job of getting him some easy throws. Um, yeah, about what I expected. Really, I didn't get to catch a ton of this either. I mean, uh, I thought it was impressive, Missouri. To get to 9 wins on the season. Um, a couple games didn't go their way, had a couple tough losses. But all in all, like a chance at another 10-win season, I think is really impressive for Drinkwitz there. I don't know if he had any antics in this game or not. Hope not. I hope he cleaned that up from the Mississippi State game. But I think
I didn't
all in
see
all,
anything.
another really good season for him. I mean, a chance at back-to-back, double-digit win seasons is definitely going to be big, and
Still a joke.
they're going to go to a really, really good bowl game as well, and going to finish in the top 20. So, all in all, yeah, I think as a Missouri fan, you'd have to be, pretty excited with how the season went overall and the steps that they've taken forward as a program.
Yeah, and then Florida goes into Tallahassee, dominates. I mean, no one's really surprised. Florida State ended the season 2-10. My goodness, that's ridiculous. At least Auburn's not that bad, right? Florida State, or excuse me, Florida handles business. I mean, DJ Lagway. I mean, he's like you said a million times. He's a rising star. I mean, allowed him to do some things and allowed him to, take some shots through the air, but they didn't really have to. They ran the ball extremely well, ran the ball for 200 plus yards. Really couldn't stop Montrell Johnson. Him and Ball. They were both really, really good on Saturday. So that's about all you needed. I mean, Montrell Johnson went for 100 yards. Jaden Ball went for 81 yards. So man, that's 188 yards right there between the two, or 187. Montrell Johnson went for 99. But I mean, the DJ Uyunglele experience crashed and burned by the time week 5 was in here and gone. Uh, Man, to go from QB1 to crash out in college football, that's unreal, man. Was a lot like the Jeremy Johnson experience to me. Gets his one shot when Trevor goes down, looks like a absolute world beater. And then ever since every snap after that just got progressively worse. It's like he played his career in reverse. I really, really, really hate it for him. But man, the new shining star, DJ Lagway, like I said, didn't really have to put too much on his shoulders because he ran the ball extremely well. Didn't really have to be, you know, you could be pretty vanilla against this squad because they ain't much of a football squad they're trotting out there. I really, really, really hate it for the hometown kid, Roydell Williams. I really do. Hate that that's how his final year in college football went, but man, they got some problems down there in Tallahassee.
Yeah, yeah, I agree with you with Roy Dale. I mean, got hurt early in the year, only had 26 carries, 53 yards on the entire season on an absolute dreadful Florida State Seminole team. Man, to go from 13-1 to 2-10 is just almost unthinkable how that happens,
Well,
regardless of
he's
what you
he's never
lose.
lost
Like,
ever. His teams have been good playoff runs every stop he's been at until his last one in college.
yeah, just a unbelievably bad season in Tallahassee. But the Florida Gators to get to 7-5, man, a lot of credit goes to Billy
Yeah.
Napier for keeping these troops, keeping this squad of Gators rallying. Man, it was really impressive. Thought their defense dominant night, 8 sacks, 5 takeaways. Um, Running game was really, really good with both backs. I think. Thought they did a good job of kind of getting outside, getting on the perimeter, kind of running off tackle a little bit. Thought they got that going some. DJ Lagway is just so hard to get down in the pocket, man. I mean, there's a couple times he escaped and just made some absolutely absurd throws. Um, the camera view from the end zone, the kind of the overhead shot. Cole Kubelik had posted a couple clips from DJ.
Yeah.
Like, I mean, these throws are just absurd. Flick of the wrist. I mean, it shouldn't be this easy. It's not this easy. And he had every game, he has a couple of those throws where you're just like jaw on the ground. Like, it is so impressive, so poised, so tough in the pocket. Unbelievable pocket movement to get out of some of these situations and just keeps his eyes downfield. I mean, it's just so impressive for a young quarterback. Yeah, just a great night for them. I mean, running the football, he made some really good throws. Again, not an eye popping stat line for him, but man, when you turn on the tape, like man, the quarterback play in the SEC is in such good hands, especially down there in Gainesville. Can't wait to watch another couple seasons of him. It's going to be special. But yeah, all in all, just a great finish to the season for Florida, better than anybody could have expected. And I think they're setting up. They are absolutely on fire on the recruiting trail right now. A lot of momentum's in their corner, and I think that's going to bode well for them going into 2025 and ending with a good note and going to a bowl game. Yeah, hats off to Napier and crew.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, they're I'm glad they stuck with him. I was giving him crap saying he wasn't going to be there through October or through Halloween. He proved me wrong. I'm glad he's staying there. Damn good coach. There is a team. We can talk about Oklahoma LSU. LSU had their number. Oklahoma really couldn't stop them all night. Anything LSU wanted to do, they did. Uh, they were extremely successful through the air. Garrett Nussmeier had a really good night, threw for 3 touchdowns, no picks. Ran the ball okay. Didn't, I mean, LSU's not much of a running team, but they ran it well enough to keep them in it. But, I mean, Garrett Nussmeier, put the team on his back and really picked apart the Oklahoma defense. Oklahoma defense should stop the run. It might not be that good through the air, though.
Yeah, I thought Nussmeier got banged up in this game.
Yeah.
Thought he really rallied and had a great night overall. Thought they did a good job early, kind of getting the ball out on the perimeter a little bit and kind of making Oklahoma chase them some. Um, but I was I was really impressed with the game plan they had, the execution. Was able to run the ball a little bit too. Held up against a good Oklahoma front that absolutely gave Alabama fits last week. So um, I didn't know if it would be this handily, but I kind of expected that. I mean, this happens so many times. Um, uh, After an Alabama game, the team goes out the next week and does a complete 180. Um, and it's happened a lot. So I wouldn't. I really thought LSU would win the game. I didn't think it would be as convincing as it was, but yeah, hats off to Nussmeier and LSU had a tough couple weeks there early in November and losing to Bama, losing to Florida. They had lost 3 straight. To A&M before that, so thought they did a good job of recovering. Beat Vandy last week, and then a big win over Oklahoma to end it at 8-4. Not necessarily the season they were looking for, but thought they ended it on a positive note after a tough couple weeks.
Absolutely. And a team that I've kind of been feeling like they're just middle of the pack. Okay, been getting a lot of hype this year that they shouldn't get. That I thought early in the preseason, even after the first few weeks, I thought they were getting a little bit too much hype. And that would be Texas A&M. Not that I was hating on them or anything. I just thought that they were a little too hyped throughout the year and were just about an eight win football team. That's what I said in the previews. Texas comes out, proves me right, proves a lot of people wrong. Who thought Texas A&M was going to be a real contender. I mean, you go back and look at Texas A&M's schedule. They beat Bowling Green by 6. They lost to Notre Dame to open the season. Barely squeaked past Arkansas by 3. They only beat Mississippi State by 10. I give it to them. They handled LSU. Get skull drugged by South Carolina. Lose to Auburn. And then get dominated by Texas. I mean, not a bad team, just about as mediocre as they come. And for them to still be ranked 20th is crazy. I know the rankings haven't come out, but I still thought they were a little highly ranked after they lost to Auburn, being only an 8-win football team at the time. But I digress. Texas really, I mean, they were the better team. They dominated on all facets of the game. Did throw a pick 6. That was the only points that Texas A&M scored. Texas A&M has their biggest rival come back. They're finally playing them again for the first time in 13 years. They have them at home. That stadium was absolutely rocking. The environment was nuts. And you put up 0 offensive points. My God. I mean, that's Texas's defense, I tell you what, if they play like this the rest of the year, there's not a team that's going to beat them. I know that again, this Texas A&M team is as mediocre as they come. I've been saying it all year. It's not out there Oregon or Alabama, which Alabama's not mediocre, but they're not what they used to be. But they're not Oregon. They're not the Ohio States, which is again could be another one that you said not where they're supposed to be. But they're not Tennessee. They're not one of the top programs that's going to go in and potentially compete to win a championship. But this Texas defense, man, Texas A&M could get nothing going. I mean, absolutely nothing going. 102 yards on the ground on 34 carries. That's all. They kept trying to run it, kept trying to run it, kept trying to run it, weren't getting anything. Texas's defense, phenomenal. They didn't give up anything deep. They never got beat deep. Hell, Texas A&M couldn't even get shots where they could take shots or couldn't get in a position where they could take shots because Marcel Reed was running for his life all night, or he had guys all over him all night. Texas's defense played out of their minds. If they play like this against Georgia next week, I think they're going to beat Georgia. This was one of the best defensive performances I've seen all year. Honestly, this was a fantastic game plan by Sarkisian's defensive squad. Offensively, it wasn't nothing great. I mean, they controlled the clock and they moved the ball down the field and they got points, but they didn't just light up the scoreboard or anything, just running up and down the field like crazy. They were pretty balanced, to be honest. But their defense, man, their defense stole the show. And whatever plan they had to attack this offensive squad, I mean, my God, beautiful.
Yeah. No, I mean, this is by far one of the best defenses in the country. And I think one thing you can say about Texas too is there's times, yeah, they haven't been flashy necessarily, but they have by far been one of, if not the most consistent team in the
Oh,
country.
yeah.
Like their performances, like when Texas takes the field this year, you know what you're going to get from them. Like, I mean, almost every team in the country has been like this, up and down,
Yep.
and up and down. I mean, the majority of the teams are that way. But I mean, Texas has been, like I said, not flashy, but super, super steady. Defense has been great all year. The offense, I think I agree with what you said. Their defense plays like this, and there's no reason they can't. Like they've been really good all
Yeah.
year. But they took it up a notch the other night. Yeah, their defense plays like this. They're one of the top two or three favorites to win it all, 100%.
Nobody's
Um,
moving the ball on that defense if they play to that caliber. Nobody.
and two, I think yes, the offense hasn't put up a ton of points, but like
Don't have
I
to.
think that next gear's there. Like I think
I
it is
agree.
right there waiting to be had with the weapons they have on offense. Like there's no reason they can't reach that potentially by the end of the year. And if they peak at the right time, they may be the favorite to win it all. To be honest with you, I think they're sitting in a really good spot. Um, Honestly, win or lose, I think they're going to be just fine. After Saturday. But yeah, they're one of my handful of favorites to win all. Like if I'm putting out odds of the teams in the playoff, like who's got the best chance to win it all, Texas is right there in my top group, no doubt about it. They've been extremely consistent. You know what you're going to get from them. Yeah, just an absolute dominant defensive performance across the board. Um, and thought too, they moved the ball really well offensively. Thought they left some on the table. The pick six was in the red zone,
Yeah.
about to
Yeah.
score again. Like they left money on the table the other night too. I think it was a chance it could have been a lot worse than 17-7. I thought they played a really good game. That the crowd never was never in it as much as anybody thought it would be. It was never as much of a factor. They just
After the
had a
first drive, yeah,
business-like
no.
mentality.
Yeah. It was
So
they're my favorite right now. I've been saying Georgia all year. Man, they've been so damn inconsistent. Like you said, Texas has been the most consistent team. And they're my favorite right now for sure. But speaking of Georgia, we'll get into that and then we'll go to the Egg Bowl to close it out. But Georgia Tech, just what's it called? Just pure old fashioned hate or good old fashioned hate. That's what the rivalry game's called, I believe, is good old fashioned hate.
yeah, clean old-fashioned hate, I think.
Clean old fashioned, clean old
Yeah.
fashioned. You're right.
Uh,
It's clean old fashioned hate. And this was an absolute barn burner. And without a doubt, Georgia pretty almost gave themselves the ultimatum of you have to win the SEC championship or you're out. And in the first 45 minutes of this game, Georgia Tech had not just for winning, had it in cruise control with no traffic in front of them. I mean, just cruising to a victory. And in the last, what was it, the last 8 minutes or 10 minutes, Georgia scored 14, tied it up, or whatever, or 20 and tied it up, whatever it was that they scored to tie it up. They get a huge fumble. Sean Jackson, I believe is his last name. I can't remember his first name. Jackson, the defensive player for Georgia, part of a senior class that has never lost a game in Sanford Stadium, which is an honor in and of itself. Down, he forces a fumble, changes the tide of the game. Georgia recovers. Georgia ends up scoring. I believe they tied it up right there. And then it goes into overtime. And then it goes into overtime again and again and again and again and again and again. And then until finally the eighth overtime, and finally we come to a halt. Georgia Tech, Haynes King, I mean, heart of a champion, that guy. They are definitely the top four. If you're top four, you do not want to play Georgia Tech this year because they gave you a run for their money or they beat you. They beat everybody that wasn't named Georgia. And like I said, for 45 minutes, they were beating Georgia. Anyways, they got with the 2-point conversion crap in overtime is ridiculous. For teams to be duking it out for 60 minutes like that to come down to 2-point conversions is crazy. Even though Auburn won on a 2-point conversion play in 4 overtimes a few weeks ago, I still think it's absolute bullcrap if that's how it ends. I think if you're not going to let them kick it off, start them at the 50. Start at the 50. You've been playing all game. If you're that good and can go score points, you can drive down there and score. That's what it needs to be. You deserve it. You earn a trip to the red zone. You don't just plop, you're in the red zone. A red zone trip is earned. You have to grind to get there. It's not easy to get to the red zone. That's why it's such a big deal. But no, we're just going to plop them right in the red zone. And then we're going to do that again. But if they both score from the red zone and then both make the extra point, nope, no more extra points. Now they got to go for 2. Dumb. And then they both do that. Well, now we're just going to go for 2-point conversions. Absolutely stupid. To have the end of a game come down to alternating plays, not even alternating drives, alternating plays, dumb. NFL at least kicks it off. I don't like the NFL's rules. Their playoff rules are fantastic. Why it's not an all-time rule now? Dumb. Their playoff rules, fantastic. But they kick it off, and they have, I don't even, is it time? Yeah, it's like 10 minutes or whatever, another 15-minute quarter, whatever it is, 10 minutes maybe. But it's timed, and if they don't score then, it's tied. Okay, well then you give them a 10-minute quarter and let them duke it out. Not first score wins. I don't like that. Score in the 10 minutes. And then if the 10 minutes runs out, then do the 2-point conversions if you just want to do the 2-point conversions. But games ending like this is crazy. Anyways, the back and forth 2-point conversions, the fact that these teams, I believe they only didn't convert. They both only didn't convert once. All other 7 was both converted or the Georgia Tech didn't at the end. I could be wrong on that. There might have been 2 they both didn't convert, but still, I know 6 out of the 8 overtimes both teams converted. And then Georgia brings pressure on the last 2 overtime 2-point conversions. They get to them, or 2 of the last 3. They get to them on the last one, force an errant pass. And then Georgia just says, enough of this. We're just going to run it right down your throat. Ends up capping off a victory. But the last 10 minutes of the game, Georgia played with their hair on fire, and they figured out a way to do it. But that's what championship teams do. They find a way to win, even when you don't think there's a chance there. Great game by the seniors. Again, they never lost a game in Sanford Stadium. To have that comeback, that's fantastic. They'll remember that forever, especially being against Georgia Tech. But man, hats off to Brent Key and Georgia Tech because they're going to be good for the years to come.
Yeah, did you know when Haynes King ran that touchdown in, Georgia Tech was up 27-13 with 5:37 to go.
5, not even 8 minutes.
5:37 to go was when he scored to go up 2 touchdowns. To me, where the game was obviously wasn't lost here, but if Georgia Tech does a better job on the following possession, I thought they played way, way too soft. Georgia goes on an 8 play drive, 75 yards in a minute 58. To me, they were way, way too soft. They let Georgia score way too quickly with over 3 minutes, 30 seconds still on the
All
clock.
timeouts too.
All their timeouts. I just thought they made that they got way too conservative up 2 touchdowns. I think they should have played more of their normal defense. Obviously, a lot of teams score in that situation. You're obviously playing more safe than you normally would, just trying to keep everything in front of you. But I thought they were way too conservative on that
I agree with that.
possession, particularly. They scored in a minute 58. That's really gave Georgia a chance in the final couple minutes. The ensuing possession, um, Georgia Tech, Haynes King actually would have had the first down, but he fumbled. That gave it to
Could have been
Georgia
ball
in the
game.
short field, and that was that would have been ball game there. Fumbles. Georgia gets a short field, and pretty much everybody and their brother knew at that point Georgia was going to tie it up and go to overtime, and it's exactly what happened. It's just you've seen it so many times. A team like Georgia, when you got them against the ropes, you got to knock them out. You cannot let them. You cannot leave that door cracked open even a centimeter because they will kick it down every time, man. Like Georgia Tech, they just didn't execute those final couple minutes, those defensive possession, or that the one defensive possession particularly, I think lost them the game. I think if they do a better job on that possession and force Georgia to use more clock, they probably end up winning. They let Georgia score. They had several minutes left and their timeouts, and that got them back into it. But no, Haynes King battled his absolute tail off. I mean, that was um, clearly wasn't 100%, but he battled. Same thing with Carson Beck in Georgia. They battled back. They just kept coming even when it looked pretty bleak there. Late in the fourth quarter, they kept fighting, and it's exactly what rivalry week's supposed to be. Um, and I really felt like it would be a competitive game. I did not think Georgia Tech would take them to the absolute brink, and they did that and then some. And but
Yeah.
credit Georgia, man, for finding a way. And both teams, it was honestly a hell of a ball game, and I think both teams have a lot to hang their hat on. It was an awesome game, one of
Yeah,
the best of the
absolutely.
entire weekend.
And that Georgia team is resilient as hell. I mean, Kirby Smart said it best after the game. He said they're resilient. I mean, a resilient bunch, and that's the perfect word to describe that team. They've overcome a lot of obstacles, even in the Alabama game, even though they lost. I mean, to come out fighting a lot of teams, they're done at halftime at that point. They're just getting dominated, flat out embarrassed. They just pack it up, move on to the next week. Not that team. I mean, they are resilient as hell, no doubt about it. So you can never count them out. Uh,
No,
but I do want to talk about Ole Miss and Mississippi State, the Egg Bowl, one of the greatest rivalries in the SEC, one of my favorite rivalries in college football. It used to be played on Thanksgiving every year, but they changed it this year and they played on Friday. Was not a fan of that. Loved the Egg Bowl being a standalone game on Thanksgiving. Used to
yep,
fill myself full as a tick and then go sit in front of the TV with some dessert, sweet tea, and watch the Egg Bowl. That's Thanksgiving to me. I'm sitting on my granny's couch watching the Egg Bowl. Like that's Thanksgiving.
yep.
Nope, not this year. It was on Friday, which granted I still got to watch. It was still a good
About the
game.
time I'm going for seconds, man. That's about
Yeah,
the
I
time
mean
I was going for seconds.
it's perfect timing, but not this year. But again, I'm glad to see Jackson Dart, finish his career as a winner. Him and Lane Kiffin had a nice little moment there at the end of the game. You can tell how much the players really love Kiffin, and they enjoy being there and playing for him. And you can tell that by how they play on the field. Doesn't always mean they're going to win, but they definitely play hard for him. And you can tell him and Jackson Dart have a nice special bond. But I thought he played really well. Threw a touchdown, ran the ball some. Ulysses Bentley finally got back in action. Didn't touch the ball the last 2 or 3 weeks. Finally got back in action. Had a big long touchdown run. I believe it was like 70 or 80-yard touchdown run, something along those lines, just untouched to the house. Uh, Mississippi State, man, I tell you, to be as down bad as they are, my God, do they fight? This is a resilient bunch too. Their record
Yeah,
is awful, 2-10, but they are resilient as hell. Not one time could you have looked at this team playing on any given Saturday and said, yeah, that's a 2-10 squad right there? No, they fight like they're undefeated and they got everything in the world to play for. I loved watching this Mississippi State team. It wasn't ever pretty and it wasn't really many wins, but they're fun to watch. They're playing with their hair on fire. They're loving that they're out there with the opportunity. But there's no doubt about it that they are competent and they have some flashes and they showed some flashes this year. So you let Levy get his talent in there, his offense is going to flourish. It's flourished wherever he's been. I mean, even this year, they put up some numbers. I mean, they threw for 280 yards, well, 291 yards, but Michael Van Buren threw for 280 yards, 2 picks, but he did have a touchdown. They don't really, or they didn't really run the ball well Saturday. They didn't really run the ball well all year, but Jeff Levy's going to get his guys in there. He's got the toughest job when it comes to rebuilding in the SEC, in my opinion. Just from where this program's been, hasn't really been competitive since Dan Mullen and Dak Prescott left it. Really since Dak left in 2014. After that, they really haven't been too good, or 2015 whenever he left. But I like Levy. I like this football team. I know that they did not have a good year, and it's been pretty bleak there in Starkville when it comes to football for the last several years. But the future is bright if they keep Levy there and they let him build what he wants to build. I'm not saying national championships or anything, but they can definitely shock some people and have some 8-9 win seasons, potential for a double-digit win in a bowl game. I truly believe that. He's a damn good coach, and like I said, he's been successful everywhere he's been. Granted, as an offensive coordinator, but that's going to translate. I think it's already translating on the field. Their offense was pretty good this year, considering what they had. You let him get in there, I think he's going to be able to connect with the players well. Going to be hard to recruit to Starkville against other places, but he's going to get some guys in there that's going to be able to elevate this football program. I truly believe that.
Yeah, I agree. I thought they fought really hard. Thought the receivers made some big plays, some
Yeah.
contested plays down the field, a couple spectacular catches, and I think this year obviously a big rebuild, and going 2-10, 0-8 in the SEC, you never want to have to go through that. But I thought they were in a lot of these games. I mean, they
Yeah.
fought extremely hard. Blake Shapen goes down early in the year. I thought Michael Van Buren, the true freshman, showed some
Yeah.
flashes at time. Like, I mean, he wasn't even expected to play like this. He was never expected to be on the field. Like, this was going to be Blake Shapen's team. That his, a veteran quarterback coming into the SEC, a guy with some experience to kind of help, launch this rebuild a little bit and kind of, give him a guy who's been through the battles. And I thought Van Buren did a pretty good job. I mean,
Yeah.
considering a true freshman on a team that's outmanned in every single game they play in, basically. So I thought he showed some flashes, and I'm looking forward to seeing some more from him, hopefully. And yeah, I thought they really battled their defense. I think did a pretty good job in this game too, holding Ole Miss to, that's a tough offense to defend in Oxford, and not necessarily the style of game Ole Miss wants to play, but yeah, all in all, just thought it was a really hard, what you would expect in a rivalry game. Even a team that's outmanned, they're going to come in, they're going to fight hard. That's all they, um, have left on their plate is try to spoil, somebody else's season and win a big rivalry game for themselves. And yeah, I thought it was a, well played, hard fought game. Give Mississippi State a lot of credit, but Ole Miss in the end, obviously, just too much talent to outmanned them. Yeah, it was cool to see Jackson Dart, Lane Kiffin go out with a win, as you highlighted. Really special bond between those two guys. They've accomplished a lot together there in Oxford, and yeah, all in all, a fun Egg Bowl. But yeah, hats off to both teams for fighting, but especially Mississippi State considering the situation they're in.
Absolutely. And then obviously going to cover the SC championship game real quick. Georgia and Texas facing off again. Texas has only lost this year. Came to Georgia at Texas. They hosted them. Now, I know that it's split 50-50, yada, 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 but you're in Georgia's backyard now. I know I just talked up Texas. And I really like Texas. And I think that if their defense plays like that, there's not a team that can score on them or a team that can beat them. We've covered that. We know that. But you don't pick against Kirby when he's the dog. You just don't do it. It's a championship game. these guys are they're not going to come out lackadaisical. They're going to be ready to go, firing on all cylinders. You saw how they were up for the Texas game in the regular season. This is the championship game. I think they're going to be firing on all cylinders. I'm just telling you, you don't want to give Kirby bulletin board material. That's exactly what the sports books have done. You don't want to go against Kirby when he's the dog. Yeah, it's favored you a little bit this year, but you don't want to go against him when he's the dog very often. I took him to cover 10 earlier in the year. They covered that. I I really don't know that I'm going to go with the spread. I'm probably staying away from that. If I was to go with the spread, I'd go Georgia, but I'm staying away from that. I'm going to go with the under 49.5 because I think it's going to be a defensive matchup. I think, like we said, Texas' offense has the chance to blow it off the top whenever and just hit that spark and score 45. They have the ability to do that. We haven't quite seen it. They really haven't had to show too much offensively. We've covered that. But I think in this game, they're going to try and show some more things. But I think Georgia's defense is going to be able to get to Quinn Ewers, create some havoc like they did last time. Obviously, it's not going to be the exact same as last time. Texas is going to have some answers. They're going to be better. But I think it's going to be a defensive game. I think they're going to slug it out. I can't really trust Carson Beck to put up 24 plus. I don't see Georgia giving up really more than 24, 25. So that's why I'm going for the under of 49.5.
So on your pick, if you had to make a pick, you're going with Georgia. You think wins it?
If I had to make a pick, yes, I think Georgia wins. But where my money is going will be the under.
Gotcha. Okay. To be honest, I'm really torn on this. I mean, what my eyes have seen, like I said, Texas has been the more consistent team.
Right. Right.
But like you said, it's really hard going against Georgia in their backyard. Seeing what they did to Texas, in Austin earlier this year, I don't think it's going to be that physically as dominant this time because I think Texas is one of the most physical teams in the country. Um, I mean, like I said, my guts tell me to go with Georgia though, just because I think you're going to get their best. Um, I'm like you. I think it's going to be a low scoring type of game because I mean, Texas obviously hadn't put up a ton of points, and Georgia, they've had a bad problem with drops. They had a bad problem with drops in the Georgia Tech game. Like there's plays out there to be had, and they just haven't made them nearly as consistently as you've seen them in the past. So that gives me a little cause for concern as well. And I think a reason against this Texas defense, you're going to have to make some of those plays. And Georgia just really hasn't made them nearly as consistently as they need to. So I think that's a little bit of a concern in this game. But um, I'm gonna go with my gut and go with Georgia. Again, I mean, like I said, what my eyes have seen, Texas has been the more complete and consistent team. But I'm gonna go. I'm gonna lean with Georgia in a really, really close game. This just has a field goal type of feel to it to me. I'm like you. I think a low scoring, like a 20-17 type of game. It has that feel to it. But I'm gonna go with Georgia, win the SEC championship, get in the first round bye. But to me, it's two great teams. I could see it going either way, but I'm gonna lean Georgia if I have to make a pick in this one.
I'm with you 100%.
But it's going to be very great, fascinating to watch. Like I said, I think closer than what we saw last time in Austin. Some other really great championship games: Oregon, Penn State, SMU, Clemson, Arizona State, Iowa State. One other thing I want to point out before we wrap up too is a lot of first year teams in new conferences in their conference championship game. Oregon in the Big Ten, Texas in the SEC, Arizona State in the Big 12, SMU in the ACC. So this was a big year for first year teams in Power Four conferences. I'm sure there may be some other ones in some Group of Five conferences, but in the Power Four, like you had at least one first year team new to that conference. So I thought that was kind of interesting too.
Yeah, that is crazy. I heard that on the radio today. That's wild.
So it's funny, as crazy as the SEC's been this year. We've been like, what are the standings? How is it going to work out? And it's just funny how most people pick Texas and Georgia were kind of the two favorites coming in. and it's like we took a crazy way of getting there, but it ended up being Texas and Georgia after all. You know, I mean,
Yep.
it was like, is it going to be Texas A&M? Like we were talking about last week, might be Texas A&M Bama, or before the
Yeah.
Oklahoma weekend and stuff. So it's like, um, yeah, just crazy how it worked out, but it kind of ended up about like everybody thought in the end, but it took a twist and turn to get there though.
Yeah, and speaking on the all the teams in their first year in the conferences or whatever, there potentially could be two Pac-12 teams that are conference champions. They could be conference champions of the Big Ten, and they could be conference champions of the Big 12. Arizona State and Oregon both came from the Pac-12, could both be conference champions this year. Hilarious, dude. That is
Yeah, I didn't even
hilarious to
think
me.
about that.
You
That's great.
dwindled that conference away because they were poo-poo. And in the first year in their new conferences, two of those teams could 100% win their conference. Hilarious. One of them being the second biggest conference in college football. Absolutely hilarious.
Yeah, Oregon's well, and both of them are favored this weekend. Oregon's
Yeah.
favored over Penn State. Arizona State's favored over Iowa State. So they're actually betting favorites to win their conference championship
Just
games this
it's just
weekend.
like
So
hilarious. That's like poetic justice.
yeah, it's crazy, man. It's unbelievable. The Pac-12 got whittled down to the Pac-2, and the Pac-12 teams are actually doing pretty good. So
Yeah.
that's definitely something. But we hope you all enjoyed conference championship weekend. We'll be back next weekend recapping it all. We'll have a playoff bracket officially in our hands. Um, National Signing Days this Wednesday. So
Got to
be
get
sure to
Deuce
keep.
Knight to Wednesday. Got to get Deuce Knight to Wednesday. Need
Yeah, yeah,
his autograph on that sheet on Wednesday. Then I'll
yeah.
be cool.
Yep, it's gonna be some flips out there for sure. Um, yeah, should be a really interesting early signing period. Obviously, uh, the brackets coming out Sunday after conference championship Saturday, so be sure to keep it locked in on us, and we'll catch you guys back here next week.
Thank you guys.